in 1920 nationally. And actually, we just had our 103rd anniversary on February 14th, which is pretty amazing, really. So we've worked to improve our systems of government and impact public policies through voter education and advocacy. Our briefings throughout the league year, such as this one, serve to educate our members and voters and often lead to advocacy. This one doubles up on education because we're educating ourselves on how we educate our youngest learners. So before we begin, a few housekeeping notes. As Andrea said, we're recording. Please use chat to ask questions during the briefing, and I will then present them to our speaker at the end. The chat area, as I know a lot of you know, turns out to be a good place for sharing information with each other as well. And I think that's about it. I'm going to turn it over now to Barbara to tell you about upcoming events.
Good evening, everyone. I'm one of the co-directors of our program, which plans our briefings for the year, and want to just let you know about our March offerings. We routinely are offering a briefing on the third Tuesday of every month, but this month we're getting back into the habit of having more than one briefing a month, with a very special program available to our members on March 7th, which will give us all an opportunity to hear from the opponents and proponents of 2.0, the referred amendment about the Park Hill easement, and whether to change that and dissolve that or keep it. And so it would be an excellent opportunity for everyone to hear from both sides of the discussion about the advantages and the opportunities that the community will have from each perspective. And then later in March, on March 21st, we're going to have a very interesting program, which will be an update on reproductive health topics in Colorado, with focus on what is occurring in the legislature. We're going to have representatives from Cobalt and from Color, and we're also going to have a presentation about the data surrounding the crisis pregnancy centers in Colorado. So both presentations should be very interesting, and we really welcome your attendance.
All right, Sally, I think you're on next.
Okay, I unmuted. Most of you know that I've long been one of the advocates for education issues in Denver League as well as state. And I'm really pleased to introduce to you Elsa Holguin, who is currently the president and CEO of the Denver Preschool Program. And in 2006, the Denver League supported the ballot issue that began this program. It's a sales tax that funds the program that Elsa will tell you about and talk about the successes and the funds that have been spent. You know, besides being an education issue, I think what we've been trying to do is inform voters about the ballot issues that they've supported, and are they working? Are they doing the job? I'm anxious to hear the long-term results from Denver Preschool Program. Elsa, I'm not gonna give a big thing because you've got her little introduction here. She immigrated to the United States from Mexico and at the age of 17, so she understands the language issues of immigrants and she learned English as she finished high school and attended college in Denver at UC Denver and Metro State. She has 2 degrees, maybe more, I think just 2, which is quite enough. But she's been long involved in nonprofits and the Rose Foundation, multiple other ones. She's been part of the creation of numerous nonprofits. She has an amazing background in supporting our city and the people in our city. One thing, so I don't forget, we were notified that she has been nominated. She's one of the 3 finalists for the 9 News Leader of the Year Award. And I don't know if I went and voted. I don't belong to any of the organizations that it listed. So I don't know if your vote is weighted, but you can go to the 9 News website and give her a thumbs up, especially once we get finished listening to her give her spiel about how I was impressed with her message that it wasn't just her. She sees that as a way to highlight the importance of early childhood education, and so that's cool. Anyway, so I give you Elsa Holguin, and thanks for being here.
Thank you. I'll unmute myself. Well, thank you, Sally. That's an amazing introduction. And then you even asked for a vote for me. So I'm very thankful. That is really wonderful. And thank you for inviting me to the meeting today. The League of Women Voters is one of my favorite organizations. And so I'm a big fan and know the amazing work that you have done over the years. And you're absolutely right. You were one of our strong supporters for the ballot initiative that initially created the Denver Preschool Program. So today I'm grateful to have an opportunity to tell you what we have been doing for the last 16 years and where we are with early education, not just in Denver, but in Colorado. And yes, I will welcome all the questions that you may have and anything else that I can provide for your support. So the Denver Preschool Program is, you will be pleased to know that we not only have been doing great work in Denver, we are actually one of the most outstanding national models for preschool, given the success that we have had in working in preschool in Denver, and that there are many communities across the country that have replicated our model, including helping with universal preschool at the state level. And I know you wanted to learn about that, and I will tell you. And I will tell you what the difference is. I've been at the Denver Preschool Program for the last 3.5 years. I came to the preschool program after almost 25 years in philanthropy and nonprofit organizations. And I was lucky enough to be the founder of the Business Center for Women at Mi Casa and one of the first 2 staff members at the Women's Foundation. So I've been at the beginning of a lot of places, and I feel very lucky that I have the opportunity to do that. Yes, you're right. I have a degree in finance and I have a master's in public administration, and I'm a little bit of a social entrepreneur. So you wouldn't be surprised that I have started several organizations and programs. So much so that I actually incubated and hosted the Latino Community Foundation for several years, and even the planning process for what you may remember for several years ago was what we were calling the Children's Tax Initiative. And it was one of my dear mentors, Anna Jo Haynes, and I, who was serving on my committee at the Rose Community Foundation, that said this would be a great idea to incubate the planning process. So we actually hosted all the planning meetings at Rose Community Foundation. Anna Jo and I co-chaired some of those planning meetings in 2000. And then went to the voters in 2001 and failed, and went to the voters again in 2002 and failed, and went to the voters for the third time in 2004 and were successful in passing the ballot initiative that created the Denver Preschool Program. And I think what we learned at that time is that there wasn't the understanding or the public awareness about the fact that the majority of our parents, 60%, more than 70% of our parents have households where both parents work, and that children need access to preschool, not just because it's a good idea and it's not just about parents going to work, but most important because it prepares children for school and it prepares children for life. It is the best equalizer in making sure that children are getting to school ready, and it allows children of different income levels to be able to do it. So this initial tax was approved at 12 cents on every $100. That was a sales tax that we got approved for initially. We're a very different model in that we are this public-private model that allows us to work very efficiently. We are actually a 501c3. One of the things that we learned in these many lessons as we were failing through ballot initiatives is that, that there was some public concerns about raising a sales tax for early childhood and having the money just go into government. And what we were getting in terms of feedback from the voters is that they wanted this dedicated sales tax to have an organization that was accountable and implementing that funding. So we were one of the first organizations, there are now 5, that was this 501c3 model, but is funded with public dollars. We still have we have a board, we report to city council, we report to the mayor. We get the same as any other agency, we get audited by the city auditor, and we still have that connection to the city and the accountability for the city, but we have the ability to do this work. And I want to tell you what you help us create, because it is an incredible story. I'm going to now fast forward you and tell you that we go to the voters every 10 years, and we went to the voters again. And so we got reauthorized. 10 years later, the reauthorization was at 15 cents, 15 cents on every $100. And it allows us to also expand to start serving not just 4-year-olds to attend preschool, but also 3-year-olds. So let me give you the numbers today. So today, you will be very happy to know that our sales tax has provided tuition support for 60% of all the 4-year-olds in Denver. We serve almost 5,000 4-year-olds in Denver with this tuition support. The tuition support that we provide is substantial. It's not a little bit of help. It is the ability for parents to access quality care. Our average tuition support last year was $850 per month, year-round. That means summer included. We pay for the summer tuition as well. And for our highest need families, we provided $1,100 per month. Preschool in Denver is, as you may know, if you have children or grandchildren, is very expensive. It is $14,000 per year for children to attend preschool, whether they are 3 or 4-year-olds. Preschool is not free. Preschool is not part of the K-12 funding. That we may have preschool programs in education, but they are not funded by the K-12 funding sources. 3 years ago, for the first time, we were able to get a full day kindergarten. And you remember that when Governor Polis came into office, that was one of the things that he really wanted to champion, because up until then, even kindergarten was only a half a day. So only a half a day of kindergarten was free for families. If families wanted their child to attend for a full day of kindergarten, they had to pay. So Governor Polis was able to help with that initiative. We in Denver have been doing preschool for 4-year-olds for many years now. And we actually have our first cohort of children that went through the program that is now in college. And so we have been able to demonstrate that the investment that we make in early childhood pays in so many ways, not just the reality that children have a safe, high quality place that they can attend, but what we also know is that children go to school more ready to learn, both academically, that they are able to read at a higher level by 3rd grade, which, as you know, is the one on the indicators about potential school success. We also know that they have the ability to not have less need to access special services. So they are not academically behind. And in addition to that, we are delivering social emotional development so that children are coming to school with the ability to know how to work in a group, how to be in a classroom, how to have the ability to participate from both academically and emotional support. And actually now we know that the emotional readiness is even more important than the academic readiness, because if they are not ready to learn, then they are not able to learn. And so the ability to be in that environment to learn is very, very important. The work that we have implemented at the Denver Preschool Program is in this model that from the beginning we knew, which was a universal preschool model, which means that anybody that applies for funding gets funding from the Denver Preschool Program, but we do it on a scale so that we have the children that have the highest, with families that have a higher need, can get a much higher level of support than the families that can afford to be able to provide for more support for the families. But in addition to providing the tuition support, we knew from the very beginning that we are in a field that is still very early. We're still developing what early education means and how do we support children even after 30, 40 years of doing this work. We still have substantial improvements that we have to do. And one of them is that we knew that we have this imperfect market. And the way that early education works is from this approach of understanding that it needs, because these are very young children, that we have to follow a principle that we call family choice. And that is that we have to follow the family lead in telling us where they are more comfortable in having their children. So our market and the way that we do our work is by providing the tuition support. We do it by funding preschool through high quality preschools. And our preschools are combinations of preschools about in this approach of family choice. When we started the Denver Preschool Program, there were only 42 sites that could have been considered, 42 centers that would have been considered a high quality center. So we spent a great deal of time making sure that the children that we are serving are in high quality places, which means we had to work just as hard to go and find the children, enroll them in our program, navigate the system for them, and make sure that they're in the place where they need to be, as we do working with what I call the supply, which is the providers. And the providers of preschool are a combination of providers. Today, about 60% of our preschools are located within Denver Public Schools. So 60% of the children that we serve are at DPS. As I explained to you, they are not fully funded. Families will have to pay for that, for the full tuition, but because we're there, we're able to pay that tuition that they will have been charged even if they were at the DPS site. 40% of our children are in community sites, and community sites encompass nonprofit providers, for-profit providers, small centers, big centers, as well as home-based providers that are able to provide the high-quality preschool, and it includes religiously affiliated providers. So we have been able to ensure that when families are looking for preschool, they have quite a bit of a spectrum of places where their child can go. And for some of them, the public school is a really good place. Perhaps, you know, it's something that they want to introduce their child to, or they may have siblings there. For some, it's a home-based provider or a community provider down the street, a small center, a big center, varieties of curriculum that could be presented. So we have quite a spectrum of providers that we're able to help. We've been growing these high quality providers by picking them up when we do it on in Colorado. There is a quality rating system that goes from a 1 star to 5 stars. So we pick up a lot of these providers when they are a 1 or 2 star level, and then we grow them to high quality and keep them at high quality. And by growing them, I mean, we provide coaching, training, resources, and support to make sure that their staff can go back to school, can get the credentials that they need, the support that they need. We buy curriculum, we buy all these resources to ensure that not only can they get to be a high quality provider, but that they stay as a high quality provider. So today we have 276 high quality providers. So there are a lot of options for families when they are thinking, where do I want my 4-year-old to do? So it is quite a spectrum of opportunities that we're able to support and provide. And I think it makes the decision a lot easier and helpful to the families. I mentioned to you that I arrived there 3.5 years ago, and it's been a great way for me to start something and the planning process and then see it come to fruition at the other end. But I arrived in July of 2019, and 6 months later, we were in the middle of a pandemic. So that was a lot of fun to say, how do you work through that pandemic when you have very young children that need to go to school? And we worked really, really hard for the last 3 years to ensure that we were helping families in any way we can, because we knew that parents became the teachers during the pandemic, especially for young children. So we work with the public library, with home visiting programs, with all these other resources to support the parents. And then we work really, really hard with the providers who were already struggling to be able to be sustainable. And we did something that proved to be the best thing that we can do. The first thing that we did is we did emergency grants to make sure that they had cleaning supplies and disinfecting supplies and all the things that they needed to do. And then we did 5 rounds of emergency grants. We pay for rent, we pay for all these things that they needed to do. But most importantly, we continue to pay for the preschool tuition, even if the children were not there full time, or only being supported through Zoom or through the activities that they needed to do, because they needed to pay their teachers and they needed to pay their staff, and they needed to stay open, because one of the things that we know in this very developing market is if a childcare provider closes, they will never reopen. once they are closed, they are closed. They are done with business. And as a result of that, by the end of the pandemic, across the country, we saw 40% of preschool providers that closed. But in Denver, because of the support that we provided, we had four providers that closed, not 4%. 4 providers that closed, and we were able to keep them alive as the process was happening. We have shifted some of our emergency support and our emergency help to do. Right now, we're doing retention support for them to be able, well, both recruitment and retention of teachers, because like the rest of the industry, they are struggling to figure out how to recruit teachers, how to pay them appropriately, how to retain the teachers. So we're working hand in hand to make sure that we have the staff ready, because without the supply, without the providers ready, we're not able to serve the families that need this support. In preparation for universal preschool at the state level, we also shifted to start doing some pilots, and we did several pilots that help us to become a much better organization and learning how to better serve families, how to better serve providers. But one of the pilots that we did is to start serving 3-year-olds. And one of the very exciting things that I can tell you today, which was one of my goals when I arrived, is to figure out how can we go to a family and have the ability to say, we want to help you with preschool, and do it from the family perspective of what does a family really need? And what a family really needs is a high quality place that they can take their child, not for half a day. The majority of our children attend preschool on an extended day because parents have to work, like 90% of our kids, and say to the family, we will help you at this very high level to pay for preschool for your 3-year-old, and enroll them for not 1 year, 2 years of preschool, summer included. So we'll recruit them in August, keep them all the way until the next year, and deliver them to preschool, to kindergarten, which I told you earlier that is now free. So we're able in Denver now to do 3 years of high quality preschool for and kindergarten for our children. And for me, that is really a game changer. If we can come to the families and say, you're going to get 3 years of high quality education, you can go back to work, you can go back to school, we will support you through what you need before your child is even in 1st grade. To me, that is a really big changer. The pilot that we run it's something that we called a targeted universal program, and that is that we targeted the highest need families. So right now it is only the highest need families that can do the 3 and 4-year-old program. But with universal preschool starting later on this fall at the state level, we will be able to expand some of our programming to be able to help the families get to where they need to be. And what we know is that if we're able to serve the families at this level, then they are able to give back to the community. And my big message, as you were talking about 9 News, my big message about preschool and communities is this is not about helping the families and the children. This is about helping the community, helping the workforce, helping all of us to say what kind of system, what kind of community, what kind of resources we want to have available to help families succeed and be able to go to where they need to be. I'm wondering if I should answer a couple of the questions before I go to tell you about universal preschool at the state level and how this may work. Will that be a good idea? Because we may shift to different questions after I tell you what's going on at the state level.
Sure, that'd be great. We had a couple questions about, and you mentioned that you had really good results, that your earliest participants are now in college, and you've had these good results, and which is amazing, wonderful. How do you track and study this? What are you doing how long do you follow the students? Do you follow all of them? Those kind
Yes.
of.
Yes. So, yes, and I see a couple of the questions that are coming up as well. So our evaluation, first thing I will tell you that we are a very small staff. We're a lean, mean little machine that we do some really good work. When the tax initiative passed, we were capped at an administrative expense of no more than 7%. Initially, for the first tax initiative, it was 5%. We then went to 7%. So we have a small administrative budget, but we are very effective and very efficient on how we do our work. We have a small staff. We have a staff of 7 or 8. You just added a new person. And we have several consultants that help us do some of this work. And as part of that consultant group that we have, we are very serious about our accountability and our ability to report back to the city how successful we have been. So we actually have 3 evaluations that we do at the Denver Preschool Program. The first one is what is our short-term evaluation, and that is that we assess the children when they join us in the preschool program, when they start the program at 4-year-olds, and then we assess them at the end of that year to see the progress that has happened in the 1 year. So that's our short-term evaluation. Our longitudinal evaluation is quite impressive. We have been tracking our children from the very beginning, and we are still tracking our children as they are going into college. We have the second largest data system and tracking system in the country. We're only behind the national evaluation of Head Start. That for some of you will know that is monumental. He's now in the 3rd generation that they have been evaluating Head Start. We are very serious about the evaluation that we do for our families, so we're able to track the longitudinal impact of our children getting ready. And so the most recent one that we have learned is that preschool means that our children are graduating at a much higher rate from high school and attending college at a much higher rate because of the intervention that happened. And the third evaluation that we have is that we do a process evaluation. And so we're constantly evaluating ourselves to say, how can we be more effective? How can we be more efficient? And how can we do our work at this much higher level? We are starting to be so much recognized in the evaluation field that we have a couple of papers that have been accepted at the national level through evaluation entities to say this is how you do the evaluation that has to happen at this level of work. So we're able to do that tracking at that level. And I'll be glad to give you the exact numbers. You will see several briefs that we have done on tracking our children, and give you ask you to come to our website at the Denver Preschool Program, and you will see that whatever you're looking for, which is either 3rd grade level reading numbers, early English language learners in preschool, or the long-term sustainability of this program is very much there.
Impressive. I agree with the small staff too. I wondered how you find the families or how the families find you. Is the preschool program working with daycare centers to ensure that they can provide educational programs for the constituents? And
Yes,
that might actually be 2 separate questions.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, I told you how we find our providers. So our providers, many of them are serving already infant and toddlers. So you're right, they are serving infant and toddlers and 3-year-olds. So some of them is a continuation of their work. But for the families that do not know about the Denver Preschool Program, we do it in a variety of ways. Some of them, they find us through DPS or they find us through their provider. But we also do over 100 community events. And we partner with other entities in the community to go and recruit families One of our most successful ones is at the zoo. And the zoo is, we do a 1 day of enrollment where we have about 50 to 60 providers that set up booths so that families can sign up there and can learn information about how to sign up. We are there ready to enroll them if they want to receive preschool. And then the families can come to the zoo with their whole family. We have some goodies and food and stuff. And if they come to our event, they can stay at the zoo for free for the whole day. So we get over 1,000 people at the Denver Zoo for the enrollment of the family. So that's our biggest event, but we also partner with each city council member, and we do enrollment fairs at all their city council districts. Every community event that you can think of, we're going to have a booth, and we partner with other providers to ensure that we are very good at doing the enrollment, to ensure that we have incentives for the families to come and join us. I told you about the barn at the zoo where they can go for free. Early before the pandemic, I went to one of the enrollment fairs in Southeast Denver, and I found a huge line, and I had to park like 3 blocks away because there were so many families. And what I found out is that we had partnered with an organization that was getting the children refurbished bikes. And so the families were like waiting in line to get their free bike, enroll for preschool, and get a free dental checkup. I thought, I'm never going to be able to get in here because there were so many of them, but we do everything we can to make sure that we find the families. I told you we're a universal program, so we have to do everything from community events. We have a team of promotoras, which are primarily immigrants that work through one of our contractors. They work part-time for us, and they go and enroll families in all kinds of communities, knocking door to door to be able to do it. But because we're universal, we also have advertisement in NPR, because some families are going to find us by listening to NPR and other places. So we have quite a spectrum of ways to find them. And our providers, yes, are one of the best ones to be able to refer as well.
So the NPR segues into this next question. What percentage of the children are getting 100% of their costs covered, 50%, none?
Yes. So for our children, and I told you about the 3-year-old program, right now, our tuition support for our highest need families is at 100%. And that tier of funding is about 12% of all our families that are getting free preschool from us. Because of the pilot program that I told you for 3-year-olds, they're getting free preschool for their 3-year-old and their 4-year-old. So in terms of dollars, that's about an income of about $60,000. So a family with an income under $60,000 in Denver will qualify for free preschool from us. The other thing that I should tell you is I mentioned briefly about the pilot program. And one of the pilots that we did is to learn how to get ourselves to be better. And we created something that we call the DPP scholarship. Initially, we called it the GAP scholarship, but that doesn't sound as good as DPP scholarship. And that DPP scholarship is to make sure that we are working with the cliff effect that happens with families. And so we are helping families that are no longer qualifying for other programs, and we catch them not just with tuition support, but in addition to the tuition support, we give them a scholarship to make sure that they can still afford to be part of the program until they're able to do that sustainability piece themselves. So our scholarship program started as a pilot. We felt that it was so successful in helping primarily working families that were not qualifying for other services that is now being institutionalized as an ongoing part of our program. It's no longer a pilot. Our scholarship is what we will have from here on.
How many of your providers are faith-based organizations?
We have a small number of providers. Out of the 270, I believe it's only about 20, but some of them are large providers like Catholic Charities that may have, a very large center, and many of them that may be serving very low income children.
So I think we have one more question. The other questions are more about funding, and maybe we'll do that with your second half with the
Sure.
Universal Preschool. But there was a follow-up question to the research on long-term results. College is not always what a student wants. Do you evaluate apprenticeships, trade schools, certificate programs the same as you do college as a
Absolutely.
success?
Oh, yes, absolutely. So we are very clear that, the ability for children to make a plan to graduate from high school, that's a big one, graduate from high school and then be able to plan for their future. So yes, we are looking at alternative education programs and systems. And I should have said that from the beginning. It's not limited to just college. It's what the important thing is that they have a plan and that they have entered additional training or educational programs.
We did have a question about keeping staff, low pay, burnout. You would mention that you do recruitment and retention.
Yeah, and I will not lie to you and say that we have figured it out. We have by far not figured it out. We still have, this is a tough industry because in early childhood, except for the ones that are at DPS and are part of the DPS system, for many of our other providers, they are either nonprofit or small businesses, and they work with a very, very low margin. I mean, for many of our providers, breaking even is success. And even for the providers that are for profit and are very small businesses, the profit rate is 1%. So they don't really have the ability to increase staff salaries because the funding, will have to come from us or from the parents to be able to enter into the system. It is very low, and the salaries for our entry-level staff in some of these centers are minimum wage, and what we know is that in order to have a high quality center, we have to have a highly educated staff, which means that it is not fair to say to a teacher, you need to have a certificate and then an associate's degree and then a college degree. And at the higher end, we're going to be paying you $45,000, $50,000. So we've been working a lot to say, how do we get them to get into the training system? We are still losing teachers to, the grocery stores, to fast food places where they are able to get higher salaries than we have in this industry. But because of the ratios that we have to keep in these classrooms in order to meet the quality standards and the safety standards, we're required to have 2 teachers in these classrooms and not have the ability to pay for that. It is very high on our list of places where we want to support. As I mentioned to you, one of the things that we have been doing is to providing stipends, providing sign up bonuses so that they can recruit the teachers. And then we have been giving bonuses to some of the teachers to be able to keep them throughout the year. And it's not a lot of money, but what they tell us, even when we send them $300, for a teacher, they will tell us this is the money that I can use for gas or that I can use for groceries. And so we have a long way to go still with our workforce, and it's our hope that we can be able to support them at a much higher level. But the funding has to be much higher than what they have in order to be able to do it. And then one of the things that we also know is that for many of our providers, and I will give you this example because just for a minute, you get to be in their shoes, that for some of our providers that are working in very low income communities, one of the things that they often do is that they undercharge for the services that they provide, because they set up the fee on how much is this program going to cost based on what they think the family may be able to pay for. And then if they were to charge the market rate, they know that the families wouldn't apply. And so they undercost their services to make sure that families sign up so that they are able to figure out that they can afford it. So we spend a lot of time working on what is the right compensation and what is the right rate that we need to give to some of these providers, so that on the one hand, they are not scaring the families because that fee is so high. And on the other hand, they are taking into account that they need to pay higher salaries for their staff, and they need to charge at a higher level. So they're on this catch-22 that they are trying to figure out how not to scare the families, while they're also figuring out how to pay for their staff. I think we have opportunities now that universal preschool is coming at the state level to be able to put more financial resources into those providers so they can pay the salaries that they need to pay.
Somebody asked what the average entry salary was.
It's minimum wage.
That's what I figured.
For a lot of our providers, they are starting at minimum wage, and even for the ones that are, like I said, that even at a director level of a center, it is not unusual to be at the high 40s, $50,000, $60,000 level. It's still very low.
So the rest of the questions are more about funding. Did you want to talk about the universal, your next part, and then we'll do
I will be
those
happy
questions.
Yeah. So I've been, because I've been involved from the very beginning with the state, I can give you a little bit of the history of the state, and then I can tell you how this is working. And I can tell you how exciting it is that we have that opportunity at the state level. So it all started with Prop EE, which passed 3 years ago, thanks to your support as well, and many others that supported Prop E. That was the tax on cigarettes and liquid nicotine. So that was the vaping and cigarette tax that passed 3 years ago. And that tax, for the first 2 years, the funding was dedicated to pandemic-related expenses and some funding for education. So it wasn't until year 3 that the funding was going to go to preschool. And so this is the year that is going to preschool. And many of us as advocates and supporters were there from the beginning to create the ballot initiative, to ensure that the ballot initiative have all the elements that it has, based on the experience that we had at the Denver Preschool Program, that it wasn't just about tuition, that it was also about helping providers become high quality, that it included evaluation, that it included navigation services for families, and all the things that we know are important as part of a preschool program. So we provided everything that we know about DPP to the state and say, here it is. This is the ballot language that we use. This is what we learned. This is what we'll have done differently. And this is how we're going to support it. And then we engage in a planning process to ensure that we were creating the best opportunity that is there. And I mentioned to you, Anna Jo, and working on Anna Jo Hain, and working on these things since 2000. So there are many of us that have been dreaming and have been asking about this possibility that one day we could actually have a Department of Early Childhood, because we know that is that working in early education is very different than working in a K-12 system, and that it requires a much more engaged approach with parents, and that it requires much more comprehensive services for children. So when when the tax initiative passed and we started working on universal preschool, one of the things that we wonder if it was, this was the right time for us to go back and ask about a Department of Early Childhood. And I will tell you what an enormous ask that was, because I have met with several governors now that have told us no, and several places where we have to be in order for this department to be approved. We have to go through the legislature, and we had to, of course, get support from the governor. And what we knew is that in Colorado, you can only have 20 departments before you have to change the state constitution. And there were already 19 departments for many, many years. And so every time we would go and ask, they would say there is only one spot left and everybody wants it. So why should we give it to early childhood? And I thought, because this is the most important. So it was a monumental ask. And we went through the legislature to say, we have universal preschool. We have the ability to do this. This is the time to do it. Let's bring together all the early childhood programs, including universal preschool, and have one place where we can more effectively serve families. And we were very, very lucky that we got approved by the legislature to create the Colorado Department of Early Childhood, which is now open. It has been open for 6 months. It is functioning. It is exactly what, it puts us at the top now of states in the country. There are only 10 states that have departments of early childhood. It's what we need to have at the national level. It is the most amazing opportunities, because now we can bring all the resources together that we need for young children to be able to help and support families in the way that they can do it. At the same time, we were working on implemented universal preschool and creating, the process to be able to happen. And I was on the leadership team to do the creation of that group, and we wanted to make sure that if we had the opportunity to create a new government agency, that it was going to be the best government agency for families, that it was going to be the best place for families to access services. And I kept telling my peers, if we are going to create a new department that is going to behave exactly the way that all the departments have behaved, then what the heck are we creating a new department for? Let's create something that is going to be really better for families and better for the children that we are serving. So we created into that statute a mechanism that partners with, at the community level, with people that are working in communities. And so the Colorado Department of Early Childhood has the implementation of universal preschool, which is going to be in partnership with community level partners. And in Denver, they created 32 areas of potential work for the universal preschool. You wouldn't be surprised that one of the areas, of course, is Denver, and that we are the what they call the local coordinating organization for the state. So this year, in addition to doing the preschool program with the funding from the city of Denver, we are also going to be helping the state in Denver with the implementation of universal preschool at the city and county of Denver. So we've been working closely with them to become this local coordinating organization. It is a partnership in which we are helping with them with the local support, the recruitment, the engagement that is going to be there. This new department is going to also has as a mandate to do a much better job of this braided funding, blending and braided funding that we have to bring into early childhood, because it requires so many funding sources in order to be able to do it. It is also going to require a universal application, which means that parents will only have to fill out one application to ensure that they are applying for preschool and that they are applying for all the funding sources, and to be able to make it something that is more responsive to what is needed for each community rather than just a funding source from the state. So I am super excited to see that this is happening. Universal Preschool has now opened at the state level, and providers have now signed up to implement statewide, and families have signed up. And the last number that I saw for Universal Preschool at the state level is that 30,000 families has signed up for Universal Preschool. It is an amazing opportunity. It is going to be $185 million of funding statewide for Universal Preschool, which just gets us in this great place to be able to better serve families and children. So I am super excited that that department has started. They are hiring staff. They are doing all the work that you have to do. And I think it's probably going to be only once in my lifetime that I'm going to be part of. How do you create a new department? A new government department, and how do you create it in a way that is the most effectively responsive to families and supporting families? So, so that's what we're in the middle of doing. What that means for Denver is that every family in Denver, it is going to receive, if they apply for Universal Preschool, will receive $6,200, which will buy them 15 hours, 15 hours of preschool, which means that for many of our families, this is a huge help. But in Denver, it's not just 15 hours because we have the Denver Preschool Program. So we can come in and supplement and help them with all the support that they need. Now more money into the centers, which means my hope is that we're going to go deep and start looking at workforce issues and figuring out how do we better pay teachers and continue our expansion into 3-year-olds. So we can continue to serve more 3-year-olds in Denver, in addition to workers that are better compensators and providers that are doing this support. Yes, it does seem like we have a lot of work to do. We are, in terms of our staff, we are a small staff, and we have a lot that we have to do at the organization. We do it through, like I said, we have several contractors that work with us. So we have several teams of contractors that are helping us do this work. And then we have 16 years of experience. So we are really, really good at what we do. We're really, really good at how we implement it. We are so good that when the pandemic happened, you will recall that Governor Polis and a couple of other people raised something that was called the Emergency Child Care Fund, and they raised about $10 million to help first responders with emergency funds for childcare so they could go back to work. And I got a call from the Colorado Department of Human Services saying, we have $10 million. The governor wants this money to be out in 2 weeks. There is no way that we can put out that money in 2 weeks statewide to help first responders. We've been meeting all weekend. It is 5 p.m. on Sunday when we're calling you, Elsa, and say, can you please take this money and distribute it statewide? We will pay you to do it. And I said, we went to my board and I said, this is more than Denver, it's statewide. It's something that I know we can do. And we did it. In 2 weeks, we had $10 million of funding for first responders statewide, because this is what you created. You created a 501c3 so that we can work faster, we can have very effective resources, and we don't have to be with the constraints, although we still have the accountability of how we implement government funding at the community level. For me, coming back to the Denver Preschool Program and talking to providers and families that were so happy and so excited, and that we were part of their funding source, and to have providers come into the Denver Preschool Program and get hugs and get treated with love and respect and everything else. And they kept telling us, we love to work with you because it's so much easier. And I said, there is absolutely no reason why we couldn't figure out how to better get government money into families and providers in a helpful, respectful, thoughtful, and effective way. And we have done it. And I think for me, that is the big success. We have now served as the model for other organizations. And so some of you may recognize Prosperity Denver, which provides us scholarships for kids to go to college, and Caring for Denver, which is working on mental health in Denver, are modeled exactly after us. They are funded by sales tax in Denver. They both are about 3 years old, and we've been helping them in sharing all our infrastructure to say, this is how you do it. You can do it cost effective and efficient like we do. So I mentioned that there are now some sister organizations that we have in Denver. I hope it is, the next frontier on how do we do public-private partnerships with government funding that can be very effective. So that's how we do it, with a lot of consultants, as well as the fact that we've been around for 16 years.
So I think I keep saying this, but it's super impressive. We did have a question about the funding, the cigarette sales tax, or
Yes.
UPK. Is there any additional state funding? What happens if people quit smoking? I don't think that's going to happen, but or if the funding drops for some reason, or a lot
Yes.
less people smoke, right?
Yes. Yeah. So I learned a lot about smoking as we were working on Prop EE. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's more than I ever wanted to know. But here is what I learned. What I learned is that, yes, and is one of the reasons why it's good to support it. Yes, you are absolutely right. The most effective way to address smoking is by taxing it. And if you, more than any other intervention, taxing works. And so that is exactly what happens, is that people will stop smoking if the cost goes up. And there is a cycle that happens where you tax and some number of people stop smoking. So the revenue could potentially go down. But here's the sad part. Then there is a whole new population of young adults that starts smoking. And so it is a constant cycle that, you are constant. You may stop one group and then a new group comes up. And so you have to be very carefully monitoring how that happens. It is an effective intervention for the ones that are already smoking, but it does not do much to prevent new smokers that are coming into the system. We work actually very closely with Treasurer Kerry Kennedy in making sure that from the very beginning, we were looking at ensuring that we had some reserve funds through Prop EE so that we can weather the ups and downs of the potential funding. And we actually talked to several other states on how they had done this taxing of what is called sin taxes, what is taxing alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, and they go through similar cycles. So you have to be able to do that. So I still think is a good idea to do the taxing. I wish I didn't tell you that the reason it gets replaced is because we get new smokers. But the other thing that I learned, which I was horrified, is how much nicotine is in liquid nicotine, which is what most young people do it. And so what I learned is that one little vial of liquid nicotine, which at that time was only $1.99. $1.99 for a vial of liquid nicotine was exactly the same amount of nicotine as a pack of cigarettes in one vial. So when you see young people that are vaping, that's how much nicotine they are inhaling through vaping. And I thought, oh, please tax it at 700%, because it's primarily young smokers that are using liquid nicotine, but there is a lot that we can do, but it works in that some people will stop smoking if it's expensive enough.
We had a question about topics covered for 4-year-olds in their classes. Is there a shared curriculum, or do you talk to the providers about curriculum?
Yes, absolutely. So we're lucky enough that we do have several curriculums so that families can actually, they choose a curriculum that makes sense for them. And some of you have seen the spectrum from creative curriculum to Montessori. You have seen different schools, to Montessori, to the ones that are looking at emotional development, like Tools of the Mind, to other curriculums. We do have, there are standards on the quality of the curriculum that they need to have. We do not mandate what curriculum they have to use, but it does have to meet the quality standards that we have in place. And I saw a quick question. Let me see. Yes, how are the funds distributed among the 32 areas? For the state UPK, for the 32 LCOs, they are doing it based on cost of living. So the first thing that they figure out is what is the reimbursement rate? And I told you that for Denver, for 15 hours was $6,200. That is based on the cost of living and the cost of care in Denver, cost of care, not cost of living, cost of care in Denver. And so that number varies from anywhere from $4,500 to $6,200 across the state. And then each LCO, each local coordinating organization is working hard to recruit the families and recruit the providers to make sure that we have both the supply and the demand. And then the funding will be distributed based on how many children sign up in that particular location.
So how does the funding of DPP and the UPK Colorado coordinate? Do you get funds directly from UPK, the University?
Yeah, so as being part of the LCO, we get as an administrative fee. So it's a small fee, but we have a fee that we can use for some of the work that we are implementing. So that's how we get our funding for the state.
So any last questions people want to put into chat or unmute for a burning question?
I do have to tell you that if I may indulge us for a second,
Sure.
that we do have to go back to the voters before 2026 to get reauthorized. And so it is something that we are contemplating right now because like the state that doesn't want to run out of money, we don't want to have a surprise and tell our families that we're no longer authorized to provide preschool in 2026. So we have to start planning very early so that we have a chance to go to the voters at least twice in the given case that we are not successful the first time, that we have at least a couple of chances to go to the voters. We had a very high approval rating when we got reauthorized the first time. Approval rating was at 63%. So we are hoping that we have done a good enough job and that families are satisfied and helpful and supportive of what we have to do, but we do have to go back. So I may be back fairly soon asking for your support again, because we need to go back and do it. And I just want to leave you with a number, because sometimes some of these numbers sound like, how can you need more money? Look at all the money that is coming into this system. But I want to give you this picture because I was having this conversation with Senator Bennett and then separately with Senator Hickenlooper and begging them to please go and advocate for us for universal preschool at the national level. What we know, and I only talk to you about 3 and 4-year-olds, but what I really know is that family needs help from the minute they have that baby or even before. They need help with their families. They need help with their support. I know that they are many other countries that are not as wealthy as the United States, like Italy and Spain and Portugal and all these other countries, where they have been providing free preschool for the last 2 decades. Free preschool for 3 and 4-year-olds. I told you how successful we are in Denver, that 60% of our children are in preschool, and I feel extremely proud that 60% of our children are getting help for preschool tuition in Denver. The enrollment numbers for these other countries are 90%. 90% of their children attend preschool because it's free. 90% of the families can go back to work when their children are so young. You already know that they have amazing parental leave so that they are able to help families and get them ready to when these children start. And then, when we think about why are our children academically behind in this country, is because we start so far behind. And so we need to be helping families from the very, very beginning. I told you that the $850 million for universal preschool is going to cover 15 hours, 1-5. If we wanted to cover the full cost of preschool just for 4-year-olds, this will cost us 4 times the amount of money that we have available right now. So it wouldn't be $1 billion, it will be $4 billion just to cover preschool for 4-year-olds in Denver. The cost for 3-year-olds will be another $4 billion because it's about the same size of the population. And the cost for infant and toddlers is even higher because infant and toddlers, you have to have a smaller ratios. You can only have 3 kids with 1 teacher, 4 kids with 1 teacher. If you have an infant, there is no possibility of doing that. We're talking $10 billion to be able to cover the full cost of what families need for early education. And there is absolutely no way that we can tax ourselves at the local or the state level to be able to cover this cost. We can't do this unless we have the federal government coming in and saying, this is also a responsibility, like we do in all the other countries where they choose to invest early to say, how are we going to support the families that we're going to support them? I am really happy that we are where we are, but we still have a long ways to go. And in Denver, we have to make sure that we have the resources that we can support and be able to do it. You are right. Philanthropic organizations do help with a lot of the support, but now that I have given you the numbers, I think the one that you mentioned was the Gates Foundation. I think the Gates Foundation endowment, the total endowment is about $450 million. So if they were to give us their full endowment, it would then cover half of what universal preschool is costing right now. This is an economic development issue. This is a community responsibility that says, how do we get our children ready for school and how do we support our families at this level? We cannot do it with philanthropic dollars and the support that we have. And you already know that our families cannot afford to pay for tuition at the levels that they need to pay to be able to survive. Not when they are struggling to pay for housing, when they are struggling to pay for healthcare, when they are struggling to pay for all the other things that they need to take care of to be able to pay this cost. And for many of these families, unless you have a 4-year-old or a younger child, it is an incredible burden to say, how are we going to do it? But it's also an incredible opportunity because the money that we invest in early childhood pays off in such an enormous way. For every dollar invested in preschool, we're able to see the return on investment that is close to $16 for every dollar invested. The cost of a child not repeating a grade is tremendous. The cost of a child graduating from high school, getting into a job that can pay back to the community. the cost to society is huge. You know, you can think of these dollars of this is a lot of money. It is nothing compared to what we're spending in remediation of education, or what we're spending in incarcerating our children, our people, because they didn't have the opportunities that they needed to have, let alone the fact that a life was not fulfilled because they didn't have the opportunity to be able to access education and to be able to access this work. And you hear a little bit about my journey and my story. I attended preschool in Mexico. I come from a family of educators, and we didn't have money, but they made sure that I attended preschool. And I came to this country having to learn another language, but I was fully prepared to say, I know how to enter education. So I know firsthand what happens when you have education and when you have the opportunities to say, I am prepared. And I hope that this is exactly what we're doing. So I want to thank you tonight for the time that you have given me, for the amazing questions, for all your support, and in advance to indulge me when I come back and say, please help us get reauthorized.
Thank you so much. It's such a great talk. Sally, do you want to unmute?
I just want to thank you. 33 years in the classroom, I can only go, yes. And you're sort of preaching to the choir here, but hopefully will generate more enthusiasm. My daughter just tuned in, and she's just finishing her master's in early childhood education.
Oh,
So
thank you. Thank you.
Yep. So we're excited. We know how important this is. And thank you for your pep talk. And hopefully everybody will go out and share all of this good information. The briefing will be on the website for people who missed it. And again, I think it's not just important for families to know this, but for community members in the investment. Colorado is a very frustrating place to be for trying to tune people into the fact that there's a big payoff to tax money that goes to valuable resources. And so that's it. That's my pitch.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thank you very much.